Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we have a ton of NBA games on the slate today. I'm pretty pumped to have PottsPicks joining me. This is somebody I've enjoyed interacting with on Twitter for quite a while, but have never gotten to do something like this. So pumped to have you, man. Thanks for jumping in on this big slate today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been one of the shows I've wanted to get on, and just we haven't been able to make it happen yet. So glad we're able to do it, and pumped to do it. And there's a ton of games, so
Yeah,
excited to go
man,
through
it
them
is a
all.
lot. Hey, before we jump in, will you just just for anybody who doesn't know, tell people like where they can find you online and anything you're working on that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, so I think I've been on Twitter almost 2 years now. Just started on Instagram, so you can find me there. And then I have some content on on heyfellas.com. I can send you the link or whatever. Some of our picks and stuff, but yeah, mainly on Twitter. That's where I do a lot of the picks, free plays, and stuff like that. So
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's great. I'll get that link even, and we'll add it to the description. So if people want to find that, they can find it. So,
cool.
all right, awesome. Well, let's jump into all these. Get the trusty notebook out here,
I know, right? I
and
got
we'll
mine right
go.
here. So
Uh, so first up, we have the Pelicans at the Celtics. Boston is -5.5, and the total here is 213.5. What are you thinking when you first look at this one?
so this is one of the games I kind of struggled with, if I'm being honest. I think that Boston probably wins, but the issue that I have, excuse me, is if Ingram continues on the way that he's been playing, right, 20, 30 points a game, if he can get to 30, I think the Pelicans could probably cover this. And I know you and I were talking before this, and I really like Valanciunas today, like his props. I'll have to look and see what they're at, but for me, I think that that's where they have an advantage. Now, with that being said, if Brown and Tatum play really well, they could cover it. I would probably lean towards Boston covering it, but this is not what I feel comfortable with, right? I feel like New Orleans could win or they could lose by 20, right? It's
Yeah.
what team's going to show up on both sides, right? Is the
Yep.
2 for 18 Tatum going to show up or the 10 for 15? I don't know. So,
Yep.
and then in terms of the over under, I would probably lean under on this game just because I to what we talked about earlier, right? I think that there's some good matchups, both offensively and defensively, one-on-ones, right? If Herb Jones can match up with one of those other guys, that you had kind of mentioned to me before the show, I agree with that. I think if he can lock down Brown or Tatum, they're going to struggle to score, right? And I don't think that they're going to be able to score inside really against Valanciunas. So I think it's going to have to be those two. So to me, I would lean under in this game.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think we're largely on the same page. Like, I do think and we talked about it a little, but the Valanciunas thing, I think this is the kind of big he matches up well with.
Yeah.
Like the athletic bigs that can shoot 3-pointers. I think that's a tougher matchup for Valanciunas, and so I think Robert Williams is a pretty good matchup for him. I do think too, like, when I think about, especially in terms of the over under, like if I was going to say, is it more likely this game bogs down and gets really sloppy, or is it more likely it's high speed and people are just scoring left and right? I think the first scenario is way more likely. Like
Yep.
Boston's only scored over 100 in 5 of their last 10 and 3 of their last 7 at home. So, I mean, they scored 119 and 114 in a couple of those games, so they can score.
Yep.
But it just isn't a consistent thing for them. And both of these teams tend to play a little bit slower. So I do see this game potentially being pretty sloppy. I think if I had to pick, I'd probably be on the other side here. I think the Pelicans are trending up a little bit.
Yep.
And I think I would like them if I was, but it's honestly a game I probably won't take anything. Like I don't feel confident about it. Just I'd lean that way if I was gonna.
And that's kind of how I am. And as we're talking through this, right, I guess my question is outside to myself or just in general is if those two don't get baskets, right? Like I could see a scenario where Williams could get into foul trouble, right? And if you get
Yes.
Williams in foul trouble, then where do they go? Then they can really slow it down and you can run the pick and rolls with Valanciunas and Ingram or, whatever. And that's going to be unstoppable, right? And then you're making those two play on both ends of the floor. Well, I don't know. That's why I'd like the under probably more than a side in this, just for that reason. But again, it's probably not what I'm gonna play.
Yeah, totally. I think I'm the same way. So one thing I will say, just these aren't super strong trends, but the Pelicans are 6-2 against the spread on 1 day of rest here more recently. But so again, just not enough for me to go either way. But I do think the under is something to look at here. I think it's definitely more likely than the over. So all right. Well, let's since we have like 300 games today, let's jump to the next one. Next up, the Hornets are going to the Knicks, and the Knicks are -1.5. The total's 217.5. What are you thinking on this one?
So for me, and I know the Knicks and all my Knicks fans and guys that love the Knicks are going to come after me on this one, but I'm going to go Hornets. And I just think for me, the Hornets have been playing pretty good basketball. They look terrible in their last outing. I mean, they were on fire in terms of just, I mean, they were filling it up, right? And what are they? I think they're, where was it? I had it just pulled up. Yeah, they're second in points per game. And I know that the Knicks are really good defensively, right? But in terms of the way that the Hornets play, I just think Martin Luther King Day, LaMelo Ball, I'm going to go with them. I also think that it probably goes over just the way that they play, as many threes as they take. If they get hot early, again, my issue with the Knicks is I just don't think, and I've said this from the very beginning, and with the Hornets, they could. The Knicks don't have that guy that can go just get them a bucket whenever they want. They've got some really nice players. RJ Barrett's a good player, and Randall's a good player. But they don't have that guy consistently when they need it in crunch time that can beat someone one-on-one. And I think the Hornets have a couple guys that can do that if they need to. And then that's going to sink in, and then they can kick it out. And we know that they love the three. So if they get hot, I think that this game goes over, and I think that they cover that. My concern that I have is inside, right? Like, can they rebound? Can they eat? But that's always going to be a concern with that team. With long shots, they may not
always
have
an issue,
right? Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm going with this game. We might be on the opposite sides, but that's just kind of I don't know.
Not so we're on the same side in terms of the spread. Like, I agree. The Knicks have been playing good defense, and actually Charlotte's been worse on offense the last couple weeks, but better on defense. Like, they've actually been a pretty solid defensive team for a couple weeks now. And like you were referencing, the Knicks have allowed under 100 points in 8 out of their last 10 games, and 5 of the last 6 at home. So they've been stingy on defense lately. And they're on a 3-game win streak. However, like, the biggest correlation that I could find for Charlotte scoring well, like if they score 110 or more, they generally shoot 35% or better from 3-point range. And this is the thing, is like, they haven't been great lately, but they've shot under 30% from 3-point range in 3 straight. And until those 3, they hadn't shot under 30% 2 games in a row the whole season. Right. And now they've done it 3 straight. So it's like, there's got to be positive regression coming there in terms of their 3-point shooting. The other thing is, like, I was reading some about their last game versus Orlando, and just talking about how they tend to get up for big games, but then they can, just not get up for the games they should win. And this should be a game that they get up for. Like you said, on MLK Day, big audience in Madison Square Garden, like, they should get up for this game. So
see, and that's kind of what I was thinking. As I mean, if we know anything about the Balls, right, is they want the big stage, and I can just see, it's probably a prop I'm going to take, right, and it could fail, but I'm probably going to take an alternate prop on LaMelo's points and threes today, just because I think he's gonna show up. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, I just think that, again, the Knicks are a good team, but for some reason I just have a feeling that Charlotte is going to show up today.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And I do like on the over under, I do just feel not very confident either way on that. Like the Knicks have been so good on defense lately, and Charlotte's not been as good on offense. But I also do agree with you. If they can just get hot from three out of the gate, they could blow the doors off too. So I just don't feel confident on either side of that. So
Yeah, I think I feel more comfortable on this, like on the Charlotte side, than the over under on this game probably.
yeah. A couple trends here that speak to some of this. Charlotte's 5-2 in the last 7 between these two teams against the spread, and the under is 6-2 in the last 8 between these two teams. Okay. So, I mean, trends, like when I first started looking at trends, I was like, oh, this is, what's going to happen. You got to take it with a grain of salt, but just something to throw in the hopper, So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's go on to the 76ers and the Wizards. This one, Philadelphia is -3.5, and the total is 215.5. At least when I was looking at it, Green, Thibault, and Milton look like they're still going to be out for the 76ers. And then we were talking before, Beal is still a game time decision, but he's been upgraded to questionable. And so it feels like trending toward playing, but that's still a game time decision. So what do you think about this one?
So I think it goes back to that inside, right? Like, who's gonna stop Embiid? Like, I don't think there's anyone in the NBA that can if he's healthy and he's going. And so to me, I'm gonna take the 76ers just because I think not having those guys that you mentioned, I think are important. But I still think they have enough, especially if Beal doesn't play. Now, this number tells me that I think Beal's probably going to play. Otherwise, I think that this line is probably closer to 4.5, right? But I just think the inside, right? And Philly has been so good on defense over the last couple games. And I just feel like, and last time they met, I think, then they held them to like 96 points or something like that.
Yep.
I don't see the 76ers not scoring over 100 in this game. I think they're probably in that like 105 range, right? It's probably like 105 to probably 95, 98. Now I do. So for me, it's 76ers and the under. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I think that they have guys that can match up defensively with the wings for the Wizards. And again, where are they going to get their buckets, right? That's the big concern if Beal's not in. I know they've got a couple guys that have been playing really well, and Kuzma, and I think, but to me, I think that they can handle them defensively. They played really good team defense. So I just don't see how the Wizards can score enough to stay with them and handle Embiid inside, right? I just think he's going to be too much.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of think the same thing. And it's like you said, nobody can handle Embiid in the NBA, but this is an even worse matchup, right? Like, and I think that at least at times where I've watched the Wizards, it feels like they're at their best when they're able to drive into the lane and either get layups or kick it out for threes. And I think Philadelphia is a hard team to do that against.
Yep.
So I think matchup wise, it's not great. So I'm on the same side as you, and like just a couple stats that I thought were interesting that maybe lean toward that as well is that when Philadelphia's lost, they've really struggled with rebounding. Like they've been under 40, and they're actually dead last in the NBA in terms of rebounds per game at 42.1. Yep. But Washington's allowed 40 or more in 13 out of their last 14 games, and the other one was 39. So they're allowing a decent number of rebounds. So I don't think it should be a problem in this game.
Well, and I think something that I looked at in this game too were from the free throw line, right? Like that's going to be big in this game, in my opinion, because like you said, if they can't drive and get to the basket, because they're 9th in free throws per game, the Wizards are. If they can't get to the basket, that takes away a good chunk of their points, right? And on the other side, I mean, the 76ers, they're 4th in free throws per game, right, at 17.5. So I think that they probably shoot over 20 free throws, probably 22 to 25 in this game, just because how are they going to stop Embiid, right? They're going to have to foul him and hope that he doesn't score. So, I think for me, that's where that spread, just that gap gets bigger and bigger. And I just don't, and also Philadelphia is pretty good on the road. I know the Wizards are, I think they're 12-8 at home, But Philadelphia is like, I think in their last 24, 16-8 away on the road. So that's still, to me, like they're pretty consistent, right? And I think, I'm sure Philly fans wish they still would have kept Jimmy Butler, but
Right.
I still, with Embiid, man, he's just so good.
Dude, to your point too, I just looked it up, and Philly's 15-9 against the spread away this year.
Yeah,
so pretty solid.
Yeah, so, which is weird, right? They just, maybe Ben Simmons was onto something when he said playing in front of the Philly fans. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Maybe,
but no, I don't know. This line to me is a little fishy. I thought it should be more than 3.5. So.
Yeah. Well, and it could be the Beal factor, One other thing I was going to throw in, man, just as we talk through this, I feel like I'm liking Philly more and more. So you were talking about the free throws and the interior game, which I hadn't looked at those numbers about free throws. But the other way that Washington would score, which is the 3-point line, which they do score 110 or more when they shoot 30% or better from 3-point range most of the time. But Philly's held opponents under 31% from 3-point range in 9 out of the last 12. So they're actually pretty stingy against the 3-pointers as well. So it's like, if they can't get to the line, if they can't get layups, if they can't shoot the 3, there's not much left offensively. For
right. Yeah. How are they going to score? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Philly is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 between these two teams as well. So that's leaning that way as well.
So I think we just talked ourselves into Philly.
I think we did, man. Like, the more you're saying, the more I like it. So, all right. So Philly's looking good. Next one up, the Nets are going to the Cavs. Cleveland is -3.5, and the total is 221.5. And all these lines are from BetMGM. I just stuck with one book. Like, obviously, you can find some different lines if you look around.
Yeah, I think I have wrote mine down, and they're all right in that range, right? I don't.
Okay, yeah, it's like close at least.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So what do you think here, man?
Oh, man, there's a lot to go into this game, if I'm going to be honest. When I was looking at it, I just love the Cavs. This is like a personal play for me, right? Like, I just love the Cavs. I love the way that they play. I'm going to take the Cavs here. I know it's probably not the right play in terms of just because Brooklyn's been, Brooklyn has all of the talent in the world. But, man, I love the way Cleveland plays. And they're at home. They've been good at home. I like the way they play. They score a lot of points. They rebound pretty well. I think the thing that, again, go back to I'm a big free throw guy, as you can probably tell, right? They're 1 and 2, 1 in percentage, 2 in per game. Wow. And when you look at the flip side, free throws per game, Brooklyn is 20th. They're 17th in free throw percentage. When you come down to close games, right? And in Cleveland, last game, they shot 50% from the free throw line, right? Because I had them and I was sweating it out. I was like, just make your free throws. So for me, I don't see that trend continuing with them shooting 50% on, I think it was like 25 free throws. They would have blown the Spurs out. So to me, I just think, I think inside they're going to be able to take advantage with their big bodies. And having Darius Garland back, I'll go back to that video you shared, a month ago, right? I keep going back to it. Like, when he's on the floor, man, they're a different team. And I just think that, again, I think that Brooklyn is very talented and they might win this thing. But for me, Cleveland's made me a lot of money this year, so I'm not going to steer away from them at home.
Yep. So you might be talking me off what I was thinking. And honestly, I love the Cavs. I'm with you.
Yeah.
And this
is a straight. I really don't my heart, not my head bet. So I think there's value in Brooklyn. Yeah, I do.
Well, and it is big. So Durant's out for like a month or 2 now. So that's a big deal. But on the road, they're going to have Kyrie, which I think they just need him offensively. Also, LaMarcus Aldridge should be back for this game. Not that he's amazing, but he just gives them a little bit of size, which they need against Cleveland. So the other thing just for me that makes me a little hesitant is Cleveland's first game back at home after a 6-game road trip. And I just sometimes wonder if there can be a little bit of a letdown coming back from that, and you get back home and, that's maybe more of a narrative thing. But one thing I am interested in here potentially is the over, though, as well. Brooklyn scored 120 or more in all but one game since Christmas. And Cleveland hasn't been quite as good on defense without Rondo, I feel like. Or I'm sorry, without Rubio. Both like guards with our names, but without Rubio. But at the same time, especially with Durant out, I think Brooklyn's gonna struggles defensively. And so I don't see them holding Cleveland down to like 200 or 103 or 4, I see it more being a game that's played in the one teens somewhere.
I would 100% agree. I mean, and Cleveland can score, right? I mean, we know that. And I think Kyrie is probably going to be pretty aggressive. So I was on the over in this one also. In terms of the speed of play and things like that, like I think both teams can score. And the pace is going to be important in this game, I think.
Yep, it is.
And I think it's hard to look at pace of play with Brooklyn because Kyrie plays very different, right? Than others that will, traditionally would have the ball, or if Durant walks it up or whatever. So I think that it goes over as well. And both teams defensively, I think, are going to struggle. So that is the same side we're on. Again, my Cleveland bet is just because it's my heart, not my head.
Totally.
I think there's probably value. I think the value is definitely in Brooklyn, but I'll probably bet heavier on the over.
Yeah. One thing to consider here too, I think it's Blaze Bets who always brings this up if I'm remembering correctly, but Cleveland's first quarters have been insane this year. Like they win the first quarter almost every game. So that's something you could look at too, potentially. But
okay. Well, and I looked at, what was it? There was another thing is, what is it? Over is 5-0 in the Cavs' last 5 versus a team with a winning straight up record.
Okay.
Winning record. So for me, and the Nets are 4-0 in their last ATS in the last 4 games as an underdog. So that's something to look at maybe too, right?
Yeah.
So
and the over is actually 5-0 in the last 5 between these two teams specifically as well.
Okay.
So
another
trend to throw in.
Yeah.
One thing, I know we're not going heavy on props either, but I heard this or read it somewhere today that last year with Durant out, that Harden averaged 21, 8, and 9, and Kyrie averaged 29, 5, and 5. So just something to consider, that those guys are going to both have really high usage.
Yeah.
With
and
Durant out.
One that I've been looking at the last couple of weeks since he's been back is we've played Kyrie over assist. I don't know what it is, but it came in at like 3.5, I think, like last week when we played it. And to me, that just seems low for a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. I think he hit 4 in the first 3 quarters, and then he didn't get another one the rest of the game, right? But because he focused on shooting. But so cool.
Which he likes to do at times.
Right, yeah.
I was just trying to pull up the assists here and see if they had a line. So at least on BetMGM, it's over under 4.5, but over is plus 125.
Okay.
Over 4.
I think he's probably in that 4 to 5 range. So I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was at 4, I'd probably take it because worst case scenario, you get a push. But
right. And I mean, the plus money is good, but like you said, that's probably right where it should be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next one here. We got the Bulls at the Grizzlies. Memphis is up to minus 8.5, which is a jump. I think they were at 6.5 this morning, and the total is 225.5 now. Obviously, Levine is out. Caruso, Jones, Green, Ball, and Williams all out for Chicago, though. And Brooks is the only person that should be out from Memphis. So what do you think about this one?
I hate when lines jump, but, I mean, Memphis should roll, I would think, in this game. Who's gonna score? I mean, that's a lot that you're putting on just a couple players for Chicago. And Memphis has been playing pretty well. Now, I know that they had, a long road trip, not too long ago, but I don't know. 8.5 is a lot of points. So that worries me a little bit just because it jumps so much. So I don't know if I'll touch this game, but I don't know if Memphis loses. I just don't know if they cover that 8.5 to me. And it's hard to tell with not having a lot of those guys in for Chicago, right? Not knowing about, obviously Levine's out, but we're still kind of learning how they play. So they were starting to struggle the last couple, probably the last week or so with him. I feel like they were getting complacent in good defensive teams, and I don't know. To me, I feel like the Grizzlies are the better team right now. They're deeper. They have more to throw at them, and I think they just probably wear them down and probably pull away. But again, I hate laying 8.5. That's a lot of
Yeah,
points in the
it's a
NBA.
lot of points for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
dude. But I mean, I'm on the same side as you, though. I think, Memphis had an 11-game winning streak, and they even said when I was just reading some stuff from their beat writers, like they just ran out of gas. I mean, they had played so many. I mean, they had multiple back-to-backs in that 11-game win streak. They just had played so much. And now they've had 2 days off, and they're a young team. So, I think 2 days to recover is big. They're 5-2 against the spread with 2 days or more of rest. So that's big. And then Chicago, I think when all this upheaval happens with a team, eventually things settle back in and they don't stay as bad forever. But their defensive rating has been 126 or worse in their last 3 straight games. They just can't stop anybody on defense. And Memphis has been over 110 points in 10 out of their last 12. And so they've just been scoring incredibly well. And then the other thing that I'm looking at here is that when Chicago has 40 or less, they have 40 or less rebounds in 10 out of their 11 losses, and Memphis is such a good rebounding team. They're 5th best in the league at 42.3 a game, and they've held teams under 40 in 3 straight. So, so I just think there's some stuff there to say that this should be a good spot for Memphis. I think for me, it's probably one of those spots I watch live, see if the Bulls can get a little bit of a lead, and then get a better line. So, looks like we got frozen here. Hopefully it comes back shortly. I will talk about a couple other things, and we'll see if it unfreezes. The one other thing in this Bulls and Memphis game is just if you want to look at some player props, there are guys for Chicago who are going to have higher usage rates. Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White are 2 that I would look at. I mean, obviously it's going to be DeRozan and Vucevic as the main guys, but they're going to have to step up and fill larger roles than they have been. And so those are a couple guys you might want to look at. All right. He jumped off. I'm guessing he'll jump back on here in a second. Hopefully we'll get him back and be able to get back to the breakdowns together. I am going to go ahead and move on to the next game. And then when Potts gets back, he can jump in as well. The next one up is the Pacers and the Clippers. Here, the Clippers are -1.5, and the total is 209.5. For the Pacers, Brogdon's back out. He just can't stay in. He comes back and plays a few minutes, and then he's gone again. Lamb is out, game time decision, and Craig is a game time decision as well. It looks like Miles Turner is probably out for Indiana. These are 2 teams that are really both just a mess. Let me check my messages here. All right, nothing yet. Hopefully he'll jump back on. But both of these teams are a mess. Indiana's lost 9 of their last 10. In their last 7 away, they've been under 100 points scored in 4 out of 7. And the 3 others were 105, 104, and 100. So they're just not scoring at all. And with Brogdon back out, it doesn't help them in terms of offensively. The Clippers, on the other hand, they've been under 100 points in 3 straight games and 4 out of the last 6. So they're a team that just really can't score as well. I mean, at home, they have been 106, 108, 104, 108 in 5 of their most recent games, but 87 and 100 in the other 2. I mean, these are 2 teams just feel like they don't have the personnel to be good right now, and they're really sloppy. I do think Indiana might be due for a little bit of positive regression. They've just been so bad, and they're a team that has had stretches this year where they've played well and scored pretty well, but that just hasn't happened lately. Both of these teams also play pretty slow. So Indiana has a 96.73 pace, and the Clippers are at 98.3. But they've been under that in 4 straight and 7 of their last 10. So if anything, this is a slow team that's playing even slower. Sorry, I'm just messaging with Potts here. He's trying to get back on, so hopefully that will happen. I don't know what happened with StreamYard here. Maybe something's going haywire. One of the stats that I would look at here for Indiana is when they're at 49% or better from the field, they're almost 120 points in most of those games. The Clippers allow 44%, and they've only allowed 49% or better in 1 out of their last 10. When Indiana's around that 44% from the field, they tend to score 101 to 107. So I think this has all the makings of a game that should be in that lower channel in terms of points scored. I would put the upper end for Indiana around 108, but I don't even think they get there. I think that's like the top end. And then the Clippers just haven't been able to score against anyone, and they don't have anybody coming back or anything changing where that looks like it should change to me. The only thing that would probably keep me off the under in this game is that the over is actually 4-0 in the last 4 between these two teams, and it's 7-1 when Indiana's on 2 days of rest or more. So there are some decently strong trends to the over. But if anything, I would take the under on this game. There's no way that I would go over between these two teams when they've been so sloppy. So that's what I'm looking at in this one. If Potts can jump back on, we'll go back and see what he has to say about this one. We'll kind of revisit things, but I'm going to keep moving for now until we can make that happen. The next one up is Milwaukee and Atlanta. Oh, I should switch the little banner here. Milwaukee is -5.5, and the total is 230.5. So in this one, we've got Bogdanovich and Capella still out for Atlanta. And talked about this recently, but having Capella out is a pretty big deal. That, you know, they have scored better the last 2 games, but at times they've really struggled to score when Capella's out. And it takes away that inside presence for them. Capella's a big guy who's really athletic and can help them with pace, help them run the floor, can get those easy buckets by the basket. So they're just not as good offensively without him, even though Trey's carried them a little bit and they've been a little bit better offensively lately here. Holiday's still going to be out for Milwaukee, which continues to be an issue, but we've seen them long enough now that we know that they just tend to be a little bit up and down. It's almost like trying to get them in the right spot when they play when Milwaukee's playing. Atlanta's lost 5 straight and 10 straight at home. So just a long trend of being pretty dang atrocious here for the Hawks. These two teams did play November 14th, and Atlanta won 120-100. So they did have a good game there. Trae Young went off. He had 42 points and 8 threes. So, I mean, on the one hand, you could say this is a great spot for Trae. On the other hand, you could say he's not likely to have a game quite like that again. And you would think the Bucks would bring some defensive intensity and focus to Trae, so maybe he doesn't go off quite like that again. In terms of other things on this game, one of the interesting trends that I found is that when Milwaukee's scoring dips below 100 points, they tend to have a pretty strong bounce back the next game. So they scored 96 and then 117, 93 and then 124, 90 and then 126, 99, 118. And last game they scored 96. So if that trend holds, I think this is a good spot for them to really bounce back offensively. Atlanta has been offering very little resistance to teams defensively, so it's a good matchup for that as well. So I'm looking for Milwaukee to score 115 plus today based on these trends. I mean, the lowest they've bounced back with has been 117 so far this season. So I think it potentially could even be bigger than that. Let's see. Sorry, checking this message again. Oh, his internet crashed. That's why. Crap. Well, I'm just going to tell him jump back on if you can. But I hate the internet crash. But hopefully once he gets it back up and running, he'll be able to jump back on. So anyway, this I'd be curious to hear what Potts thinks, because this Milwaukee-Atlanta game is one of the ones I'm probably most interested in today. I really like the over in this game. I mean, it's high now. It was a little lower earlier, and this takes away a little interest for me, 230.5. But again, I'm expecting Milwaukee to be able to score 115 plus, but then I'm also looking for Atlanta to do that too, right? And the team total is going to be high with this number. It's going to be, 118.5 or 119, something like that. So the number's getting a little high. Maybe I watch it live, but I do expect a lot of points here. I also like Milwaukee here. I mean, I feel confident that Milwaukee's going to score a lot. I feel much more shaky on whether Atlanta will or not. Milwaukee is 9-3 straight up in the last 12 between these two teams. And then the under is actually 6-1 in the last 7 between these two. And so, again, the way I could see this going under is just because that number has gotten up so high. And if Atlanta only puts up, I mean, in their last 7 at home, they've scored 108, 91, 118, 98, 115, 126, 105. So it's like this 50-50 thing where half the time they're putting up over 115, but the other half of the time they're down around 100 or even below it. So I just can't trust Atlanta to score enough points to push this over today. Next game up, we've got the Blazers and the Magic. All right. And again, if Potts gets on, we will jump back to these other games real quick to kind of see what he thinks. Portland started out, I believe, plus 1.5 in this game, but now they're minus 1.5, and the total is 216.5. Portland, we know that overall they've been really atrocious on the road this year, though they have seen a little bit of positive regression in that regard. They're still not good, or sorry, not at home, on the road. They're still not good on the road. They're like one of the worst in the league against the spread. But it's been a little bit more positive. They also do get CJ McCollum back today, which is definitely big for them to have someone like him back in the fold when they've had it's been like Anthony Simons and Nurkic and that's it, maybe a little Nazir Little. But I do sometimes wonder when a guy's coming back like that and it's going to disrupt whatever flow Portland's been able to develop, because McCollum is so ball dominant that he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And I think eventually people like Simons will learn how to work off of him, and it'll be a positive for them to have McCollum back. But I'm not sure it's a positive in this first game. Like, I could kind of see it going either way. It could open Simons up for some better looks and better shots, and he's been absolutely torching people. The other thing, if you like narratives, is that Simons is actually from Florida. This is home for him. And I was reading he's going to have a bunch of friends and family in the building today. So you know that he's going to want to have a big game. Even though it's just Orlando, it's a big game for him. And so he's someone I might actually look at for some props. And also just if he does go off, I think that's a good sign for Portland, having McCollum back. Oh, here we're getting Potts. Let me add him back in. Hey, man.
Hey, sorry about that.
Uh-oh. Now we're freezing again. Let's see if we'll see if it unfreezes again. If it does here, we'll jump back, but we're freezing up for the second time. So gotta love the technical difficulties on the stream. It happens sometimes. So in terms of this Portland-Orlando game, we also do have Jalen Suggs back for Orlando. Oh, there we go. You back, man?
I'm back, I think.
Hey, there we go.
Awesome.
I can hear you.
Good deal.
So,
yeah.
Hey, let's just jump back a couple games. I've gone through a couple games and just kind of shared what I was looking at, but would love to get your thoughts.
Yep.
So I think the last one we did was it Bulls and Grizzlies? Did we talk Pacers? Oh, Pacers and Clippers. We were just starting, I think.
Yep.
Did you have any other thoughts on that one?
I have no idea how to bet that game.
Okay.
If I'm going to be honest, I would probably go under because I don't know how they're going to score. But those two teams just infuriate me.
Yep.
I can never figure them out. As soon as I think I have the Pacers figured out, they win by 30 or they lose by 30. Like, I just don't know what to do with them. So I would probably lean Clippers money line and under, but not confident in it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. So.
Yep. And this was one where I would lead in Pacers. I just think they're due for a little bit of positive regression and the under as well. So, but I'm like you, no confidence in it. So we're frozen again. We can't get off the freeze here. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody. This is tough when this is how it goes. I'll try to clean this up a little bit for the podcast as well. If you're listening there, hopefully you won't even hear all this. So, well, I'm going to, for now, until there's like a little bit of movement, but I'm not hearing anything from Potts right now. Not really, man. It'll crackle in and out a little bit here and there, but it's mostly frozen. So, give us just a second here to see if this clears up. Sorry, everybody. We will keep moving on with the games here, but I definitely want to get his thoughts if he's able to get it working, but it looks like it's just moving a little too slow right now. So, all right. Other thing, it looks like maybe he's jumping off again right now. So the other thing on that, going back to the Portland Orlando game, when Portland shoots 38% or better from 3-point range, they tend to score pretty well. The trends aren't massively strong, but Orlando's not great at the guarding the 3-point line. And so I think that could be a spot where Portland, if they can get hot, which they have sometimes recently, especially with Simons, Little, McCollum, I think it could be a lot of points for them today. So trends on this game, Portland is 3-1 in the last 4 against the spread between these two, and the over is 4-1 in the last 5. So this is a game where I do think I lean toward the Blazers, but not with any amount of confidence. And I do lean toward the over, but again, not with a lot of confidence, partly because Orlando just hasn't been scoring a lot, and they do play okay defense, especially at home. So can you hear me at all, man, or no? No, we're still frozen. So going to keep moving here until things would unfreeze. Next up, the Raptors and the Heat. Miami is -3.5, and the total is 208.5 here. Gary Trent Jr. is a game-time decision, and Khem Birch is out for the Raptors. Big news here is that Bam Adebayo looks to be back, and it sounds like they've brought him along slowly. So if he does play, he should be able to play at least a decent amount of minutes, which obviously gives Miami much more presence inside. And I don't know that it'll pan out in this first game, but long-term, if they can get him back, that just makes a massive difference for them. Kyle Lowry is going to be out for this game, so it would be the revenge game narrative, but he's not going to be playing, which is a little bit of a, changes things a little. So Miami's offensive rating is 5 points worse without Lowry. Their defensive rating is 5 points better. Or I'm sorry, their offensive rating at 5 points worse and defensive rating 5 points better. So they're a little bit better offensive team by the numbers when Lowry's not playing, but they're better defensively when he is. So it's kind of, 50-50 each way on that. This is Miami's 4th game in 6 days, so they've been playing a lot. In their last game where, man, they had that game most of the time, and then they lost to Philadelphia the second half of the 4th quarter. It got away from them. But they shot pretty terribly in that loss. They shot 38.4% from the field, where their average on the season is 45.9. And then they shot 25.7% from 3-point range, and their average is 37.5. So I don't expect Miami to shoot that badly 2 games in a row, especially against a team like Toronto that, doesn't defend the 3 especially well. Both these teams are bottom half of the league defending the 3, so I think it's a decent spot for both of them shooting. But on the other side, both these teams play with a really slow pace. Miami's at 95.8, Toronto 96. And the biggest thing I saw here is that without Lowry, Miami plays at a 92.2 pace, which is absolute snail. So because of that, I don't think I could play the over in this game, even though you look at it and say, man, both teams should be able to hit threes here, should be a good spot for them. But man, that pace is just not going to afford a lot of opportunities. So I don't think I can play an over in this game. I do lean a little bit toward the Heat. I think some of the matchups are okay for them. And if they get Adebayo back, that helps them deal with some of the size of the Raptors, which is the biggest positive that I would probably give to the Raptors in this game. But both of these teams, and the Raptors especially, have been pretty inconsistent. And so it's hard to know where to go. But those would be my leans, would be under if I had to pick, and then the Heat against the spread, but not super confident on that game. Next one up is the Suns at the Spurs. Phoenix is -4.5, and the total is 227.5. Ayton is a game-time decision here. He tweaked his ankle. I wouldn't be surprised to see him sit in this one. I would think they'd want to let him rest and recover. The Suns are on a back-to-back, and they're 2-4 against the spread on back-to-backs this year. These two teams have played twice already. Phoenix won both of them, 115-111 and 108-104. So you can see a little bit of maybe why the spread is set where it is, because the first 2 games were 4-point games. So it's right on that mark with Phoenix -4.5. I do think that the Spurs, I'm looking for them to start bouncing back offensively. They've really gotten healthy now. And I've talked about this before, but if you look back earlier in the season, when they were healthy, they were really good on offense. And so it's hard to predict if this is going to be the game where they're going to do it, because they're playing a good defensive team in Phoenix. And so it doesn't make it look like a great spot for that bounce back. But I do think we should look for the Spurs to start improving offensively in terms of their points scored here in the near future. Phoenix on the other side, they had a big game yesterday, and this is a much smaller sample, but when they've scored over 130, their points have dropped just a little bit. So they scored 137 and then 108, 133, then 123. So still pretty good there. They scored 135 yesterday. So I look for those points to at least come down some, though the Spurs are definitely not a great defensive team. So I'm not sure how much resistance they're going to offer. Oh, sweet. So Potts is having trouble getting it working, but he did send me some picks here in terms of what he likes for today. He also likes the Bucks -5.5. So he and I are definitely both on that one. In terms of ones we've already talked about, he also likes the Magic over 216, which again, I said that's where, and he says that's a lean. That's also the direction that I would lean if I was going to pick that game. And then he likes Heat -3 as well, which I said that is what I liked in that game as well, was Heat -3. I'll keep pulling up his picks here. He gave me a few others for the games we're still talking about. So we'll see one at a time whether we're on the same side with those things. A couple other numbers that I would look at here is that San Antonio allows the 5th most rebounds in the league. But when they get 47 or more rebounds, they're 17-0 since the middle of November, and they average 115.8 per game. Phoenix allows 45.4, so it's not too far away from that 47, and they have allowed more than 47 rebounds in 6 out of their last 10 games. So it's not like a lock or anything that San Antonio is going to be able to rebound well enough here to put up a lot of points. But I lean that way, especially with Phoenix coming in on a back-to-back. And so if anything here, I would lean toward the Spurs +4.5, but I don't love that number. If this was more like 7.5, I think I would be interested in the Spurs, but at 4.5, I'm definitely much more hesitant. I think when we talk about live bets, this is one where the chances of Phoenix getting a lead in this game at some point, I think, are pretty strong. And so I'm going to be watching this live, and I definitely like the angle better of watching this spread to go up to that 7.5 or even up toward 10 and maybe getting in on the Spurs at that point. Also, if I was going to choose, I like the over here better than the under. The over is 4-1 in the last 5 between these two teams specifically. And like I said, I'm looking for the Spurs to start scoring more points, but they're also not a great defensive team. They give up 113 a game at home this year, and Phoenix scores 112.4 on the road. So the problem is where I would line this game is somewhere in that 225 to 230 range. So I think the total is right about where I would put it. So again, it's probably not something that I would bet, but I do think there's a good chance of some points being scored in this game. Next one up, we have the Thunder at the Mavs. Dallas is -11.5, and the total is 210.5. Oh, let me check real quick if so. In that last game, Potts likes the Suns, so we're on different sides of the spread there, and he likes the under 224. So we'd probably even like it better at the line that I just saw, which is 227.5. So we're on different sides on this game, but I can definitely see the reasoning for the under on that one. Okay, so on the Thunder and the Mavs, man, the Mavs, like we've talked about, their defense has just been pretty incredible, especially against bad teams, and that's a key in this one. They have given up some more points when they've played decent offensive teams, but Oklahoma City is not a decent offensive team. In fact, to illustrate that, these two teams have played twice already this year, and Dallas won both 95-86 and then 103-84. All right. All right. Sorry about that. Oklahoma City is only averaging 100.2 points per game away from home this year, and Dallas is limiting teams to 101.8. So right around that 100 mark, and against the Thunder specifically, it's just been a terrible matchup for the Thunder, and I think that continues today. The one thing I will say here defensively is that Dallas is better on offense with Porzingis back, but they're worse on defense. Their defensive rating is almost 7 points worse. So if you wanted to pick a reason why this game could go over or why the Thunder might be able to score a little bit better than they have in the past, it would be because Porzingis is back. But that's not enough for me to think it's going to happen here. versus teams that are bottom 7 pace in the league, which Dallas is. Oklahoma City is 3-5, and they've been under 96 points in 5 out of the 8 games against those teams. They've lost by 10 or more in 3 out of the 5. So it's about 50%. And this spread, I think, is pretty wide. Oklahoma City is 0-7 against the spread at Dallas in the last 7. So that is, pretty strong trend. And the under is 6-1 in the last 7 between these two teams at Dallas. So if I'm going to pick something here, even though the Thunder's team total is at 98.5, which is really low, I'm interested in the Thunder team total under. I'm interested in Dallas against the spread. I wouldn't bet the Thunder here, but I'm a little hesitant because this spread is so wide. Another thing that I might watch live. And then in terms of the total, if anything, I would go under here. Dallas might score a little bit better, but I'm not going to trust them. There was one other thing that I was going to say on this game. The other thing I was going to say is that Oklahoma City's 3-point percentage is due for a drop. They've been shooting the game. They've been shooting over their season average the last few games from 3-point range, and they're just not a good 3-point shooting team. So I think facing a good defensive team today, they're going to be in the 20s somewhere in terms of their 3-point percentage, and that's just another thing that's really going to limit what they're able to score. Potts on this game, he likes the Mavs to cover that minus 11.5. And he likes the under 209. So we're definitely on the same side there in terms of the under. And we would lean the same way in terms of, I don't feel strongly about the Mavs. He likes the Mavs to cover. All right, last game of the day. We're finally there. It's the Jazz and the Lakers. And the Jazz are on a back-to-back. They're minus 4.5. And the total is 230.5. Utah's 3-4 on back-to-backs this year. They'll have Hassan Whiteside out. But I will say this back-to-back might be a little bit different because before this back-to-back, they had 3 days off. So they actually should be reasonably well rested, I would think. For the Lakers, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, LeBron James, all game time decisions. We know the drill. LeBron will probably play. Carmelo and Dwight will see. I think Carmelo matters a little bit, especially on offense. I don't think Dwight Howard matters much at all. Utah has played 7 of their last 8 away from home. And I would say one of the biggest factors in this game is just that Rudy Gobert should be playing. I mean, the splits with him in or out are just massive. So the points allowed, they've allowed 106 per game with Gobert in and 118.6 with him out. They've scored 116.2 with him in and allowed 108.6. So, I mean, the swing is 12.5 points on defense, and the swing is almost 8 points on offense. They're just a completely different team with Gobert in there or not in there. So with him back, I like them here. When you look at the points that Utah is scoring, I mean, I gave you the average, but if you go and look at the actual numbers, they're over 120 about 3/4 of the time with Gobert in. And the Lakers have not been very good on defense. And so the only thing that gives me pause is the back-to-back, but I kind of like Utah to get to 120 plus here in this game. And then in terms of the points allowed, if you go and not just the average, but look at the actual numbers, they hold teams to 110 or less probably 2/3 of the time, I would say, and down around like 104 or less a quarter of the time. So they're really limiting teams in terms of points scored. Now, LA has been scoring a little bit better, but I also don't think that in most of those games they're facing defenses like Utah can throw at them. And so I like the Lakers to be able to score okay here, but probably more in that like 106 to 112 range, not up near 120. So because of that, I do like Utah against the spread here because I think this game ends up with Utah at 120 plus and the Lakers at like 114 or less. And I think there's potential for movement in the other direction for each of those teams from those numbers. So I like Utah against the spread here. The total is a little bit high for me. I mean, 230.5. You're counting on the Lakers to score quite a few points here, or Utah to just absolutely go bananas and be at like 130. So I don't necessarily love a play on the over-under. If anything, I would probably look at the Jazz team total over in this game. And so that's where I would look here. One thing trend-wise against this is that Utah is 2-6 against the spread in the last 8 between these two teams. So again, that's just one input, and I don't think it jives much with the situation and the data, but that is something to throw out there to pay attention to. Potts on this one, he likes the Jazz -4 is what he sent me. So he and I are on the same side on this one as well. I think it's a good spot for the Jazz, and hopefully they're able to come out and be pretty dominant. All right, it's a huge slate today. Hope you're able to enjoy a lot of the games. There's a lot of good ones on the slate. Obviously looking to have a bounce back week and be a little bit stronger. I'm still considering what I'm actually going to play out of these games today. I'm going to try to be a little bit more cautious, but I do think there are some good spots. Would really appreciate if you're listening to this on the podcast, if you can leave a review and rate the podcast. That would be incredibly helpful. If you're watching it on Twitter, likes, retweets, whatever, really appreciate those things. And as always, would love your comments. Let me know what you think about these games. Which spots you think we're right on, and which ones do you think maybe we're off? Because I love when other people give me what they're seeing, because there's obviously things that I'm missing plenty of the time. You can follow me on Twitter at NBA Attack, just NBA TTACK, and I will see you on Twitter. Have a great day, everybody.